Hello, everyone. Today we wanted to share some answers to commonly asked questions by faculty regarding the Disability Services Office. Today we have Judith Walker, the Disability Services Coordinator, and myself, Kathy Sider, the Disability Services Testing Center and Alternative Formatting Coordinator, presenting.
Thank you, Kathy. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, all universities are required to provide reasonable accommodations for students that have disabilities. Our office is charged with providing students the academic accommodations that are needed, once again, for students that have a documented disability.
One of our frequently asked questions would be from faculty. I have a student that is struggling in my class. They do not have enough time to complete their exams and quizzes. Should I refer them to your office?
That is a great question that is commonly asked. And yes, the answer is yes. Please refer them to the Disability Services Office. We just ask that you gently refer students to Disabilities Office rather than saying, go over there to the Disability Office. When we're in person, you may have a brochure that you can show the student and let them know that they can come to the Disability Office. During this remote learning environment, you may show them our website and gently refer them that way. And once the student schedules an appointment with our office, we will get them the right resources and the services that are needed.
Next, a common question we receive is, I have received an accommodation letter from your office. Now what? Can I reach out to the student myself? Should I wait for the student to reach out to me? And then what if the student never reaches out to me?
Great. That is a great question that's asked. Once you receive a letter from the Disability Services Office of accommodations for a student, we really want the student to reach out to the instructor. We want the student to manage their own accommodations. For example, a student that has additional time on tests and quizzes, it's their option to use that additional time. So they may use the additional time on a test, they may not use it on a quiz. Those accommodations are not going to go away. And you as the instructor are not able to read a student's mind. So we do want the students to reach out to the instructor. The second part of this question is, what if the student never reaches out to me as the instructor? I would, as the instructor, reach out to the student as a courtesy. And I would let the student know that this is in fact a courtesy and that they are expected to communicate with you when they want to use their additional time or if they're not going to use their additional time. So what will really happen if the student is not wanting to use their additional time on a test or a quiz, they won't reach out to you. But absolutely, if they're wanting to reach out and use the additional time, they should be communicating that with you as the instructor.
Great. Next, so when you receive that accommodation letter, it will include all the accommodations a student is entitled to for that particular term in your class. Sometimes you may look at those accommodations and wonder, what do they mean? How can I implement them for my student? So going back to Judy's previous example, the first common one you will see is additional time on tests. This can be either for 1.5 or 2 times, meaning a student has additional time of time and a half or double time for tests and quizzes. The amount of time the student is going to receive is based on how much time you give the class as a whole. If you are giving the class as a whole an hour, a student with additional time is going to get up to an hour and a half to complete the exam. A student with double time will have 2 hours to complete that exam. Or quiz. As Judy alluded to previously, the student will need to contact you to activate and say they want to use their additional time on test or quiz that is coming up. We do recommend them do it at least 3 days to a week. If you need a particular amount of time in order to get the additional time built into your exams for your students, please indicate that at the beginning of the semester and send out a reminder to them that they please give me this amount of time in order to get this set up for you. If you're having problems or don't know how to build the additional time into your online assessments, for your students, you can always reach out to the Canvas team. There we also have a faculty resources tab on our disability services webpage you can use. And if you are using a different program, maybe it is a book publisher that is doing your assessments, always reach out to them to find out how you can add this additional time for students. Another type of accommodation you might see is a reader on the accommodation letter. Basically, the student needs a reader to read their assessments to them. Right now in the online environment, a lot of students may be using a program that will read out loud their test to them so they can take your exam, or they may be using a family member that is located in their home reading the tests out loud to them. Scribe is the next one that you might see, meaning the student needs dictation for their exams. At home, someone might be doing this for them to get the answers back to you after, or there are some types of dictation programs that may work for your student that they're using to dictate their own answers. If there's any type of situation where there's a problem and they need a reader or scribe in that, you can always contact our office and we can discuss these types of situations in a case-by-case basis. The next type of accommodation you might see in your letter would say additional time on assignments, 2 to 3 days. Judy, if you'd like to explain what that means a little more.
Absolutely. Yes, this is an accommodation that you'll see often. And this is an accommodation that needs an additional explanation. I get a lot of questions about this particular accommodation. So the way this accommodation is meant to be used, the way it's not meant to be used is it's not meant to be used on every single assignment point blank. There are stipulations to this accommodation. So a student would be entitled to the additional time on assignments if the assignment was requested of the student with short notice, or if the due date was changed of the assignment to an earlier due date than was originally scheduled, or if the student is ill during the time that the assignment is due. I am always addressing this accommodation with the student when they meet with me, and they are told exactly the stipulations and how exactly this accommodation is meant to be used. So this takes us to a few other accommodations. Let's talk about PowerPoints being provided ahead of time. That accommodation is pretty much self-explanatory. This just means that the student has a disability that requires PowerPoints or slides to be provided to them ahead of time before class so that the student can follow along once they do get in class. Another accommodation is medical condition may cause some absences. Well, there really is no accommodation that will allow an absence, and this accommodation does not allow an absence. And this is explained to the student when they meet with me. This accommodation is simply an alert to you as the instructor that the student has a legitimate reason or a legitimate disability that may require them to be absent from class from time to time. It is also explained and discussed with the student that during an absence, the student should be communicating with the instructor while the absence is going on. And they should not be waiting until they return to class and saying, oh, I was ill, I was out for 3 or 4 days, I was out for a week, I was ill. They should be communicating with you while that absence is going on. Closed captioning. This is another accommodation that has become really popular during the remote learning environment. So when you receive this accommodation, a student has a hearing impairment. And under the Americans with Disability Act, students are entitled to and required to have closed captioning and the appropriate closed captioning. Therefore, the Disability Services Office will provide that service for disability students only. You'll receive a letter, and after the letter, you will receive step-by-step instructions as to the next steps to provide the captioning and about the financial resources for the captioning that will come from the Disability Services Office. Once again, Disability Services financially will provide the services for closed captioning for disability students only.
Thank you for checking out this Faculty Disability Services Frequently Asked Questions video. If you have any other questions, do never hesitate to ask by reaching out to our office at disabilityservices@umich.edu.